Okay, firstly, just the usual disclaimer that what we say here is not investment advice per se, but we are thrilled, friends. Alligator Energy, there's nothing more satisfying for Sean and I to find a company at its extremely early stage and watch it go from strength to strength, milestone to milestone, really going out there and doing what they said they were going to do. And that's why we're so happy to keep following you, Greg, is because that's exactly what you've done at Alligator Energy. You really have taken the progress, you've done everything that you has said you were going to do so far. I'm putting pressure on you to keep it going, but so far so good. And obviously it's a testament to your management strength and the strength of the project. And with that intro, Greg, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Greg. And it's nice to be chatting to all your investors again, plus our shareholders.
Yes.
Joining me is Mike Menchie's on the call, and we've been doing a pretty big amount of work, which we're happy to have a bit of a chat about today. As you mentioned, we've gone a bit from strength to strength in terms of our capital raisings last year.
Right.
And now utilising those funds from shareholders and investors to really get on the ground with our projects in a significant way. So I'm happy to give a brief outline, go into any detail. Let's see where you would like to take.
Yeah, just start out with Samphire. It's your flagship project. It's not the only project, by the way, within the Alligator portfolio. So maybe we'll touch base on it, but certainly it's the flagship. Just give an overview, maybe of where it started from a couple of years ago, and then more importantly, though, Greg, obviously there's a lot of upcoming activity there. You're going to increase the resource size, but maybe just start with a little bit of a background.
Yeah, well, look, the important thing was the Samphire project we acquired in 2020. We'd been looking at it for some time. We did acquire it before the uranium market really started to move, so that's both fortuitous for us, but it is a reflection of the fact that within our team we've got a lot of experience in uranium, and we've been looking at the market for some time and looking at other projects for some time. So that was a good pickup. And we brought on a number of new shareholders who were in that project but were unable to trade because it was unlisted. So that was fortuitous. But the project was discovered in 2007. There was a let's call it a global resource, rather a mineralised envelope over two areas, Blackbush and Plumbush within Samphire. And that was declared to be about 47 million pound at 100 ppm cutoff grade. Now, the key issue about that is many projects have a mineralised envelope like that, which has got contained mineralisation, but you've got to focus down on what is potentially mineable in the future. And really, since we've raised the funds last year and worked on Samphire, that's what we've been doing. So in particular in the Blackbush area, and people will see this from our recent both ASX investor releases, but also the report on the resource, which came out on the 1st of September. We focused on a higher cutoff grade, 250 part per million uranium cutoff grade, which is typically what ISR uranium projects are using globally, both in Australia and internationally. And we started to look at, with the drilling we managed to do from October through to February this year, we augmented the historical drilling. And we've now put out an updated resource, which is smaller in pounds, but higher quality. It's both indicated and inferred, and it has now a much better grade. So the grade is lifted from 230 ppm global resource grade up to 670 ppm. So it's now at a mineable grade level, this initial project here at Blackbush. But there's a few key areas we had to work on. We did over 50 holes initially in this area. We did 14 cored holes, so bringing out 100 millimeter diameter core of ground in the sediments to really look and assay the uranium within the sediments, and to look at the porosity, look at the permeability, and do a range of now leach test work, which is underway. We also then did prompt fission neutron tool, which is a tool that most ISR mines use because it direct reads uranium in a very good manner by emitting neutrons and recording them back. We also have both the historical gamma, and we did new gamma in a range of areas. So with sometimes 3 to 4 methods of measurement in a down hole, you really are able to correlate. In fact, our resource consultant plus Andrea, who's our chief operating officer here, are really able to coordinate and correlate the historical drilling with our new drilling. and get a lot more confidence. And hence we lifted up a portion of this resource into indicated status. So that was, it's quick to say, it's long to do. Trust me, both from the drilling time through assays, because assays are taking a long time at the moment, and then correlating the prompt fission neutron and the gamma radiation together. So that's been a great outcome. We've now got a high quality resource. It's about 15 million pounds, so it's of that mineable sort of level.
Right.
Also, what's important is in the historical mineralised envelope, there were a couple of layers of mineralisation which we don't think will be mineable by ISR methods. One was an upper level layer which had a lot of lignites associated with it. We've dropped that out of the resource. And then a weathered granite or saprolite layer, which may be mineable, but we really don't have enough information on the permeability and the porosity of that part of the ground. So the middle beds, the 2 to 3 main Kanaka beds in the sands, are the ones we've focused on. We've got hydrogeological reports on them. We've got very, very good knowledge now of the uranium presence and the detail where it is. We also have an improving knowledge of the paleochannel locations. And this is critical to future expansion of our resource, because it's the paleochannels and where the roll fronts are within those paleochannels, which is the critical part of exploration for ISR. And our team, which has expanded dramatically in 12 months,
right,
has now got a very, very good handle on that. So,
right.
Yeah. Go on.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, okay, because obviously you're throwing out a lot of technical information there, and clearly that's part of your background, which maybe you can go into. You're not for you and uranium, this isn't your first rodeo, so to speak. But you have international reach, and what I'm curious about is, by getting all this data, are international players looking at you, whether it's trading partners, JVs, or whatnot, because you have such, all this information available, as opposed to just a piece of land?
Well, the view of us internationally started to change actually early last year. So when we announced the partnership arrangement with Traxys, the global trading group,
right.
Traxys are our agent, and they will help us put in future offtake contracts from production from Samphire. But it's much more than that. We have an arrangement whereby they assist us to look for future projects and things like that. So when we put that deal in place with Traxys in May 21, that garnered a lot of attention from US shareholders. So we now have about 20% of our shareholding in the US. I've been over there earlier this year to meet with key shareholders in the US. I also met with a range of people in industry with Kevin Smith, the managing director of Traxys. So he and I met with a range of people there. Most recently, I've just come back from the World Nuclear Association meeting in London, where Kevin and I met with nuclear utilities. And I can let you know that there is extremely strong interest from nuclear utilities in new uranium production from Western producing countries. So that's essentially the USA, Canada, Australia, certain parts of Africa, and they are really looking seriously at new contracts. Many of the companies like ours, but a bit more advanced, they have existing projects which are restarting. They are already doing contracts. So they're small players, a bit bigger than us, but not much, and maybe we're 2 to 3 years behind them. They're already doing contracts, but we're getting in place to look for future contracts within the coming 1 to 2 years. We also have, we've expressed this before to your investors, we've been looking at other additional opportunities in uranium or linking up with energy minerals like our Northern Italy stuff.
Right.
And we're continuing to do so. We've looked with great interest in the US for about 2 years now, or 2.5 years. And we're continuing to do so. So we're looking at opportunities to expand our portfolio even further.
Right. And by having that JV, as you said, with Traxys, for people that don't know, Traxys, I don't know if they're the biggest, but certainly one of the largest clean energy battery material traders in the world, based out of New York. Does that just help you as far as getting, you have to look at 100 projects, Greg, as you know, to find one that you like. Does that just help you be that funnel, so to speak?
Yeah, they assist in that, because Traxys, of course, have looked at many, many projects. So we have a business development group within Alligator Energy, which comprises Mike and myself, of course. Andrea comes into that as Chief Operating Officer, but we utilise a very experienced consultant, Tim Mosey, out of Denver, who used to do a lot of project evaluation work for the investment company RCF. And Kevin is on that group. and we have engaged an advisory group behind the wall, Taylor Collison, to help us with evaluating these projects as well. So we have a significantly experienced group looking with us at future opportunities. We would have looked at, I'm thinking 40 or 50, Mike, but it's probably a little more.
Right.
Some you go into a lot of detail. Some we would do a quick glance over and say, look, this jurisdiction is not for us, or this method's not for us, or something. In general terms, we know Australia well. We've got an experienced team in exploration and also some very good experienced consultant geos looking with us here in Australia. We're looking within our tenement package, not only for your additional uranium, but also for other minerals such as rare earths or graphites or copper or other things. So we're looking at our existing tenement package, because it's silly focusing just on one mineral. You've got the full package, so let's have a good look. And we're also looking in the US. We like the US market because it's got some of the best market opportunity in terms of nuclear utilities, of course.
Right.
But there is a lot of ISR in the US. And so there is a lot of in situ recovery type methods being used there. And we believe that in situ recovery is a great method for future uranium production. Of course, Kazakhstan is all in situ recovery uranium. And it's a very non-invasive method of mining. It's very easy to rehabilitate and clean. It's very acceptable and accepted, shall we say, in South Australia, where there's two existing uranium ISR mines, plus the Boss Energy's Honeymoon mine about to restart in the coming 18 months. So there is a lot of familiarity here in South Australia with that, but there's also a lot of experience around the world with in situ recovery, and we're building that expertise in our team. We now have additional capacity that's come in recent months. Yeah.
Hey, Greg, before we go to the rest of the portfolio, I just want to keep focusing on Samphire a little bit. Investors, as I said earlier, invest from milestone to milestone. You have some upcoming activities that are going to go on there in the next 2 or 3 months, I believe. Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, most certainly. So we have this initial resource statement out. We want to enhance that even further. So we've converted about 6 million pound from inferred to indicated. We want to lift that even further. And we also have extensions of that known ground. And if people look at our presentation, you'll see where we've got directions of arrows to show where we're going to go. So we've got a 100-hole drilling program commencing on the first week of October. So that's all in play. Our team will be up there at Samphire commencing that work. That'll go through into early in the new year. But the first holes will be focused on, again, lifting the quality of the resource from inferred to indicated. So we will probably look quickly to get another updated resource out either by later in this year or early next year. We also have I mentioned the cores that we brought out. We've sent portions of those cores to ANSTO, the nuclear science group in Sydney, which has been doing the test work on them.
Right.
Those initial results have looked great. We've had encouraging initial draft results first, and they're completing their work, and we should have those results in a few weeks. Now, the combination of our updated resource, those results will be fed into a scoping study. So we have a full scoping study model established using a group, WGA, which acquired the Inception Consulting Engineers, which are ISR specialists here in Adelaide. And we're now utilising them to do that work. So we would have a scoping study coming out in the 4th quarter, and which will cover off on the first economic analysis of the project. So that's exciting, but it's not resting. At the same time, we're drilling, even as we now set up, and Andrea and her team have done this beautifully. As we drill a hole, we get PFN results. We have those results evaluated from that hole within that day, and it goes into the resource model virtually within a day or two. So we're now really established well to do that sort of work quickly. And it's taken a lot of technical work to get there, but it's great. Next year, we've started the approval process now for what we call a field recovery trial. So this is like a pilot plant for ISR mine, where you do 1 or 2 or 3 series of your extraction rings, and you do a test extraction and test processing to extract uranium. So that we are getting approval to have in place in the 3rd quarter roughly of next year, so this time next year, and have that operating. And then the important thing is the resource update, the field leach trial, and the parameters from that are what you need to feed into a future feasibility study. And based on this timing, we would predict a feasibility study by around mid-24. So
So that would be your DFS would be about circa 2 years from now.
that's correct. I think we'd probably, if we can start it earlier, like one of our aims is to do things faster because we've taken our time getting people on board, but as you get more people, you can do things better. If we can start the DFS in the first half of 24, I think that'd be ideal. So, yeah, so it's and then we don't have in our plans or documentation our future production scenario. People ask me all the time, when do you think you could be in production? And realistically, you've got to get the field lease trial done, the DFS done. You've got to commence your full approvals for the project, which we will be doing during this field recovery trial, and then get a full approval for the project, then finance, and then construct. So there's a number of steps to go through. I think that if we were commissioning during the latter part of 26, then I think that'd be an ideal time. Or during 2026. So let's see how we go. And that's going to take a lot of work to get there.
Yep, and that's where you have to go, as I said earlier, milestone to milestone. There's certainly a lot to chew on over the next, frankly, the next rest of the calendar year, and then certainly 2023 is going to be very busy for you too, Greg, as well.
Yeah, but the very important thing about that is the nuclear utilities want to contract years in advance. So once we're into our updated resource again next year in the field lease trial, I think you'll see us putting in initial offtake contracts, conditional contracts dependent on certain milestones, even by later next year, because you need to lock in those initial contracts to underpin your financing and DFS.
Right, that certainly makes sense.
That's our view.
Sorry, Greg.
Yes,
can I just jump in quickly? One of the other things that I think we should highlight to investors is just the regional potential there. There is a slide in our deck that investors would have seen of the area between the Blackbush deposit that Greg's referred to and the historic estimate down at Plumbush. That channel system, or the paleo channels that Greg mentioned, we do have from some existing data from the previous owner, some ground gravity, but we're running now higher resolution gravity program where we can track those channels, and we are hopeful that they are uranium bearing, which does, and we need to understand the interrelationship between Blackbush and Plumbush.
No, Mike, you're absolutely correct. The important thing from this expansion potentialist perspective is the Blackbush deposit currently sits in an area of the channels which is about 10 to 15% of the total channel area. So we just have so much more work to do on the ground there to progress this. And so that ongoing expansion of resource potential will be happening at the same time as we're doing all this other work. So no, that's absolutely correct. That's important because once you will have an initial 10-year life, I'm sure, with the sort of project we're looking at over the coming 12 to 18 months. But if you can either extend that life or expand the project, that'll be our aim in going forward.
Got it. Right. Okay. Hey, Greg, also though, Alligator, it's not just Samphire. Can you just talk to us a little bit about your other projects as well?
Yeah, look, quickly, we raised funds to work on these projects because it's been difficult in the last 4 or 5 years to do that. So one of our key areas is the Alligator Rivers region in the Northern Territory, so in Arnhem Land and Northern Territory. This is where Alligator started its life back in 2010 and has done a lot of excellent work there. Just to differentiate, it's close to the Ranger Jabiluka areas, the Ranger Mine and the Jabiluka Project, which are the highest grade mines in Australia. But it's to the east of them in where the same rocks go underneath the Arnhem Land escarpment, so underneath the sandstone escarpment. So it can be more expensive exploration because it's underneath that barren sandstone. But recently, in fact, by early 2020, we had approval for a new package of tenements to the north, Narberlek North. We couldn't get on the ground because of COVID access restrictions, but now we can, and our team is up there as we speak. So we got full approval to do some airborne gravity, which we've completed. And based on that, we're also doing now some auger drilling, which is almost like ground geochemistry, where because there's a weathering profile there, you need to drill a few meters in. So we're doing some auger drilling. Then we'll have some RAB and RC drilling targeted based on that. Now, probably this year, because we've been a bit late getting on the ground with the updated approvals, we'll get the auger drilling underway and be then drilling on more specific targets during the next season. So up in Arnhem Land, you really can't do much on the ground between November and May. It's really from May onwards next year that we'll have a massive amount of work. But at least we're back on the ground. We're rejuvenating the relationship with traditional owners. Your viewers might remember that we've had at least 40 Indigenous employees up there in the past, and we're continuing to try and do that engagement. And so that mobilisation, we haven't been there on the ground for 4 years, 3 to 4 years. So it's important to sort of get up there and start that work again. So the combination of COVID plus the low uranium price kept us out of that area for a while. We're now back in that area in a big way. So that's advancing. There's a lot of smoke there. And by smoke, I mean a small resource that we have, a caramel of about 6.5 million pounds, but at a good grade, 0.3%. And there's a lot of intersections with intersections of uranium in an ad hoc manner. So there's just uranium present for that area. One of our neighbours, Devex, have been drilling around the old Narbalek uranium mine. They've found some good intersections recently. So it's an area where you need a buoyant market to raise the funds to really explore well.
Okay.
But we're now restarting that work in a big way. So very keen on that. The second uranium project in Australia is Big Lake Uranium in northern South Australia.
Right.
Again, we picked this up because it's associated with a hydrocarbon basin, the Cooper Basin, where there's been oil and gas production for 70 years. It's got overlying sediments of the Eyre and Namba Formation, similar to where Beverley and Honeymoon are. It's just further to the north. It's got hot granites at depth. It's got fluid circulating through the ground. And we know from historical drilling, there is some small amounts of uranium that have been seen in those areas. We've now been interpreting channels. We engaged a structural geologist who knows how to work on basin structures like these oil and gas basins. And we're now identifying using existing public seismic information where these channels are and where we want to get initial drilling done. And our last big task there is we've been talking with the local Indigenous group there and finalising an agreement with them to get on the ground. So while we would have loved to have been drilling this year, it's just taken a long time to both get the people and the interpretation done on the geophysics.
Sure.
But we'll be on the ground there drilling next year. But certainly that project's exciting because it's brand new. It's greenfields. Right. No one has found a good presence of uranium there. We know it's there in the ground by the look of it. There's still a risk. Is there economic levels of uranium here? If there is, it could be a massive new field. And so we really are hopeful about it, but this is what exploration's about. It's taking existing models, existing skilled people, putting them together with new ground and potential and saying, could we find a new area here? So we're excited about it, but we know there's a risk.
Yeah, and Greg, timing-wise, you said it's next year. Is that in kind of, can you get a little bit more specific? Would it be in Q1, Q2 of next year, do you think?
Look, we can get on the ground there from late Q1. It's just in that area, it's for the central part of Australia, it's pretty bloody hot. But we can get on the ground there from late Q1. But I don't want to preempt. Let's get our negotiations finished with the Indigenous people, get that agreement in place and get that working. We've got clearances to do for the drilling and then get up there. But so we'll be targeting as soon as we can early next year.
Easy. And then also the Piedmont. There are a lot of Piedmonts in the world, but you just want to talk about your Piedmont.
So the Piedmont area, or Piemonte in Italian, this is the area where we've got this nickel cobalt project. Now, this is an area where the northern part of the African plate comes over the Alps, and so it's quite tectonically active. And there is 17 showings or prospects of greater than 0.5% nickel. There's historic mines that finished at the end of World War II. They had up to 2.5% nickel and 0.2% cobalt, and no work done since essentially 1945. A little bit of academic work, a little bit of geophysics in 2015 was never processed, and we processed it actually. And we've done some ground truthing to show, is it genuinely the geology, the structures, the nickel, is it present? We found, taken samples and we know it's there. And then of course, COVID hit. And this area is just to the northwest of Milan. So it was one of the first areas in the world to shut down basically. Right. So now we can get back on the ground. We've got a geophysics crew up there from mid-September. So we've been able to corner a geophysics crew, which wasn't easy, by the way. It's very, very difficult getting exploration crews at the moment. So they come in about mid-September. We're going to be doing ground EM, electromagnetics, which has really helped to define where the structures are, where the nickel is contained within, and doing some drone magnetics. So this is in the foothills of the Alps. So there's plateaus, but there's also some deep ravines and peaks. So you've got to really work in a different way there.
Right.
We have had interest from 4 counterparties in looking at this strategically, because we've been looking for a partner. 2 of them are still in play. They're very keen on looking at what our geophysics information is. So we're happy to be on the ground. We have drilling permits to drill in one of the project areas if and when we wish to. So that's going to be based on this geophysics information. So as a board, we'll decide next year how we take this forward. If we get a partner interested, we could do that with a joint venture. If we want to drill on the ground based on the geophysics, we can do that. We may even, there's an opportunity to link this up to even other energy minerals projects within Europe. And there is a lot of interest in Europe in energy minerals projects. So let's just see how we go. I just believe there's great value for our shareholders out of this project area because it's got significant nickel endowment, which has not been explored in a modern era.
Right. And also it's one of the most beautiful regions of the world. Anybody that's seen some of these screensavers out there, they're just incredible.
Yeah, I know. And that makes it hard to convince investors sometimes that we're there for the right reason, and that is nickel and not the beautiful food and wine, but that's okay. It's a great way to look at the region. And we've got to be very conscious of our main modus operandi in dealing with both our communities, Indigenous communities, but the local regional communities and things means we'll have to look very carefully at this as a project, because even in talking to potential interested parties, this is an area where you really need to do an ultra-modern mine. It'll be an underground mine, an ultra-modern, either small to medium scale mine. You'll leave all the tailings underground if you can. All you do is try to bring up a product. So this will really be an area of the world that will have what might be a very innovative ultra-modern mine. And that's the sort of thing that might be possible up there, and that we'll certainly look at.
Yeah. And talking about modern, Greg, we spoke about this a number of years ago, and, I'm going to switch it back to Samphire now and to uranium. Can you just tell everybody, because I know that there's some people on the call, uranium and the techniques for production have really changed a lot over the last, call it, 25 years. Can you just talk a little bit maybe about like the 1980s compared to 2022?
Well, the thing that's really changed over 40 years is the focus both on environment and community. In other words, that ESG system, okay? So mines, even the mines I was working on in the 80s, like Olympic Dam, took a very modern approach to future mining and how you worked it and the minimal impact on the ground. But when you've got a very large project, which is either open cut or underground, and you're mining rock and dealing with a lot of rock, you're having an impact. It's about how you manage that impact, how you work with communities, and how you rejuvenate that. That's what's probably moved a long way. But the other key aspect of our method of mining with in-situ recovery, and any one of your people who have looked at photos of Beverly will see, it's basically, it's a very dry area to the northeast of Adelaide in the Frome Basin. But all you've got on the ground is huts, which are the well fields, and pipes and drill holes. So it's very, very easy to rehabilitate. So when we had the opportunity to pick up Samphire, we knew that this is a method of mining that is for the future, because it's very amenable to low impact mining, easy rehabilitation, and more, let's call it, depends on where it is and the grade, but more effective and more efficient mining. So there's a reason why 55% of uranium in the low price uranium times was coming from ISR, and it's the cheapest method of mining. That's the other reason. So it has moved on. We've got a much more understanding about the health impacts from mining. There's been 40 years of analysis of data from employees underground at Olympic Dam, for example, which I was involved in setting up many years ago. There's a lot of information from Ranger Uranium Mine and the operations there. So radiation, the safe levels of radiation are well known and understood, and how you should operate and things like that. So that work in Australia for the last 40 years has been massive. we're now world leaders. We're advising, our industry in Australia is helping to advise the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, on how countries should set up uranium mine legislation for the future. So Australia has a vast operating experience in this area, and we're improving it all the time.
Great. Hey, Craig, I'm just conscious of time and everybody, so I may open it up to questions and answers right now. You know, for sure, feel free to raise your hand or do whatever. And then also at the same time, if anyone needs to WhatsApp me, that's totally fine as well. I completely get that as well. Okay, Greg, someone's asking me, I'll just start it out here. The grades, you've upgraded your grades. Do different grades trade at different prices in the markets? I think that what this person's saying is that, you know, it's obviously very hard to discover uranium prices, but are there different pricing for different grades?
No. So the prices, if you're talking about the uranium grade in the ground versus...
I'm reading the question, so I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah. So no. So the uranium grade in the ground is one of the factors of the cost of mining. The mining method is a factor, the location is a factor, whether you fly in, fly out, whether you have to do hundreds of kilometres of infrastructure, etc. So, for example, you know, at 670 ppm, which is that starting grade of our resource now, you know, while that might 0.06, 0.07%, while that might not seem high, it is an amenable ISA mining grade. Not only that, we're 20 kilometres from Whyalla. We've got power and water 12 to 20 kilometres away. We've got an inherent workforce locally there. We don't have to set up all that. So we've got a cheaper setup cost in other words as well. I'll give you an example. There's the range of uranium grades in the world range from about 20% at Cigar Lake and the Athabasca through to about 0.03% at Rossing Uranium Mine in Namibia. Okay. So there's a wide range of uranium grade in the ground, and then the cost of mining depends on the style of mining, the size of the mine, all those things. The price of uranium, however, everyone produces uranium oxide in one or two different forms in drums, 200-litre drums, which are shipped to a converter, and you get paid for the uranium contained within the drums. So the price of uranium is driven largely by supply-demand fundamentals. So you can do a negotiated contract with a nuclear utility for future deliveries, and that price is undiscoverable. It's not transparent because it's confidential to both parties. But there is a portion of the market called the spot market, whereby uranium is traded and purchased between parties, which is reported. And that's usually about 20% of the market. It's been as high as 50%, and it's been sometimes lower. But the spot market is one measure. But it's that long-term uranium price that future contracts are done at, which is important. And our information is that already long-term contracts in the 50s to mid-50s US dollars per pound are being done. Right. The spot price has currently been 53, but it's been down in the 40s recently. It's spiked up to close to 60 for a while. But the long-term price is important. Projects which are restarting, which have existing infrastructure, existing plants that have been on care and maintenance and restarting, it's sort of generally known that the price of that $55 to $60 is roughly where they'll need. I think we'll need that price and a bit more to build a new plant and get a project going, but it's perfectly feasible because you're already seeing contracts done in that mid-50s range up. So we are very confident that the market will be there to support future production from Samphire.
Yeah, and also for people that don't know, there's been an enormous amount of global legislation, I would say, supportive of atomic energy, Greg?
Oh, absolutely. It started some time ago, but COP26 really sealed the deal where 10 countries in Europe said, okay, we cannot reach these targets for decarbonisation without nuclear. We want nuclear to be declared as a sustainable source of power generation, and the EU has now accepted that and put that in place. Even before that, though, in early 21, late 20, early 21, both administrations in the US, both the previous Trump administration and then the new Biden administration, declared support for nuclear power, maintaining existing plants, looking at new technologies like small modular reactors and putting them in place, giving credit support and tax support, and even buying uranium from local uranium companies to help maintain their flow. So, and that's just two main areas, Europe and the US. China, of course, is still bringing on between 3 to 5 reactors every year. Japan has now declared they want to restart a number of 13 to 17 new old reactors plus build new. South Korea, with the change of their prime minister, is now going to be building new reactors. The Middle East has been a sleeper. They've got 2 reactors operating, 2 under construction, and at least 20 planned. So,
wow, okay.
This is a long-term demand scenario, but we've got to be realistic about it. The world in certain areas is still nervous about nuclear power, especially the older plants. And as the older plants drop off or have new safety features added, they become more secure. The modern nuclear reactors generally all have this passive safety whereby you don't need power, you don't need intervention for them to safely shut down. They will safely shut down by themselves. So there's a lot of innovation that's come into the industry in the last 15 to 20 years.
Yes, for sure. Hey, listen, Greg, another question I'm getting, could you give us more color around what the utilities you have met with and what they're saying about security diversification of supply?
Definitely. So there was a bill passed in Congress in the US only some weeks ago, which they called the Inflation Support Bill or something like that. But it really had a lot of things in it. One of the things it had in it was that they want US nuclear utility companies to eliminate their use of Russian uranium and Russian nuclear fuel, which they've been importing over the coming 3 years. So in other words, they've got a transition. I mean, they didn't use all Russian. They had a portion of Russian material. I think about 30% of enrichment material in the US was coming from Russia. So they've got to change that over 3 years to other supply. So it's not only the enrichment that's got to be changed, but the conversion, but also the uranium supply. So that bodes well for companies that are now looking at contracts going forward right now, and us in the near future, in the next 1 or 2 years, looking at contracts. So that is a significant change. But I really want investors to understand that 25 years ago, we were encouraging the purchase of down-blended nuclear weapons material from Russia into power station grade and then being purchased by the West, because it was a way of eliminating a lot of excess weapons grade material in the Eastern European sphere. So it's done its job. It's really brought a lot of that material into generating it from weapons into energy. So it's been a fantastic attribute from 93 onwards. But there's always changing politics in the world, and we now have changed politics, and we now have other risks, shall we say, in political circles, and therefore the West wants to wean itself off Russian energy supply. And we will be one of the beneficiaries of that.
Yeah, and I think that there's no question. Obviously, unfortunately, we have a war going on, the biggest war since 1945, I believe. But it's certainly, when it ends, I still think it will cause a lot of people to take angst and to really want to secure offtake from countries, from westernized countries, for sure. Greg, another question I'm getting is Japan specifically. They passed some legislation in the last few weeks. Has that changed anything at all that you're seeing on the ground?
What I understand is in Japan, based around how they've wanted to restart reactors, they've wanted to do it in a fairly steady manner and make sure that technically the reactors are ready to restart. They've had improvements put in place since Fukushima, so that can't be repeated. And that's been at the federal government level. But then they also have to deal with the provincial governments. And the provincial governments have been reluctant to allow reactors to restart. So there's been a lot of work going on over 10 years between the federal government and the provincial governments to allow that. I think the federal government is now putting in stronger legislation to allow them to not so much force restarts, but to let's say, prevent spurious reasons for not restarting reactors where they've declared to be safe, etc. So they're trying to make sure that they do this. You've got to remember that when over a period of about 15 months, when all the reactors shut down in Japan, they started generating power from burning oil again. Their coal increased, their oil burning increased. Right. They were doing anything they could to generate power. So as a nation, they know they need nuclear.
For sure.
And so now this new government is now pushing to make sure that works through and comes out. So I think it's important. I still think Japan has their own processes they work through, and they might take time, but they certainly are pushing harder than they were before.
Great. Hey, Greg, listen, I know we've run over time and I apologize about that a
No,
little bit.
it's
I wanted
fine.
to end it at 12:30, but it's here we are. Do you have any just closing, 1 or 2 points about Alligator that everybody should know about?
Look, I like the opportunity to talk widely like this. It's been great, but our focus in Alligator Energy is a number of things. The Samphire project represents an opportunity to bring a small new ISR project within South Australia, within a very supportive jurisdiction. South Australia is like the Wyoming of the States. It's the
Beautiful.
most experienced area of uranium mining. So this creates an opportunity to bring a project forward in an area that's very supportive. The public understand it, and so we really want to advance Samphire. But we know that from an investor's point of view, new discoveries generate massive opportunity for shareholders in terms of value. So we would love to find a discovery in Arnhem Land. We'd love to find a discovery at Big Lake. We are looking at other areas, and so we'll keep working on those opportunities for discovery. But the third leg, of course, is we have an expanding team, but a very experienced team. And there are certain project areas in the world that we like and see opportunity for. So we'll keep looking at those that can bring some value in. There's a lot of things get overvalued very quickly as the price runs up, but gradually as you come down and there's a steady state, other projects become more attractive again. So we'll see whether we can acquire something or engage with a project which creates that value. So that's our key aim. We want to do this with all the right things on the ground, with our communities, with our Indigenous people, but make sure we got that value for shareholders. And I insist our employees have got to enjoy their work, bring in innovation. They really can take the lead in terms of how they do the work in a big way. So that's fantastic.
Great. Hey, Greg, Mike, and Paul, always, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. As I said, it's amazing to watch a company really go from that early stage to moving it along. And obviously there's a lot more work to go. I don't mean to say that, that it's done, but it really is incredibly satisfying here as investors as well. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thanks for having us on.
Thanks very much, Greg.
Bye, Mike.
All the best.
Bye, Greg.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Thanks for watching another episode of 180 Markets Off the Charts. If you want access to thousands of capital raises, sign up at 180markets.com.au and you'll get access to our very next capital raise. Thanks for watching.